the Army taught me how to fly, of course, and the helicopters. Of course, you first get in a helicopter, you're just all over the place. You couldn't keep it in a football field, you're just flying, trying to hang on. And I recall one time when we had to practice auto rotations, which means you roll the throttle off and you got to land it down with no power. And I had this about 250-pound instructor, and we were in a small helicopter, it's a TH-55 training helicopter, and so he says, okay, now I want you to go out and do auto rotations. So, okay, I crank it up, and I do the traffic pattern around, and I get it all lined up and roll off the throttle, and I totally missed the whole stage field because I just floated right on by. The reason being this 250-pound guy wasn't in the helicopter anymore. So I just missed the whole stage. I had to rank it up and bring it around again. It was a good training program, though. I got hurt early and busted up my knee playing basketball in the Army about midway through through the training, and so I had to go get my knee fixed, and I came back and finished up. And I had already taken my check ride, so I had about 30 hours, and I could just fly around in a helicopter, do whatever I wanted to do. I was flying around out there like I owned the place, It was great. Well, I got moved over to the 45th Med Company over in Fort Bragg first. I'm a medical service corps officer. I had gone through basic training down in Fort Sam Houston, where they taught us a little bit about medicine, and we had to go crawl through the dirt and stuff, do our stuff, But then I went over to Fort Bragg, as I said, and we got moved as a company. We just packed up everything, put them in airplanes, and headed out. And we ended up in Long Bend as our initial place to be. And from that point on, I was just learning how to be a Dustoff pilot. They put me in with a guy that had been in there a long time, and he was a CW2, I think, or 3, and he was flying the mission, and I'm over there on the co-pilot side, hiding behind the instrument panel, thinking, "Oh my gosh, this guy's going to get killed," And he did the job just like it was nothing, no big deal. Bullets are flying, he's just sitting there and doing the job. I said, well, that's what I aspire to be. And I ended up being that. Well, we had one mission where I was called out to do a rescue out of a place that was taking heavy fire. And they had the Air Force rolling in there. And they were doing napalm right on either side of these guys that were on the ground, just napalming the living daylights out of the enemy. Anyway, I said, well, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I got a hold of the commanding officer that was flying around watching all this, and I said, hey, tell the fighter pilots to keep their asthma as they're coming in, and I'll go in right in between them. So I did. I just came right in between them, and we landed right there as they're swooping in on either side of us. Flying formation on jets, but we landed right down in there, and while we're sitting on the ground picking up people, there was napalm going off on either side of us. So we had to coordinate getting out of there so they didn't run us over, when we got out of there, but that was pretty wild. It's a machine. The hairiest one, I guess, was we tried to go in. We didn't actually accomplish the mission, but one night we were flying in a really cloudy, raining like crazy, and a lot of clouds on the deck. And we lost the helicopter that night due to a crash in the instrument weathers, in the bad weather. And so I devised a way we were going to get into the LZ. And so I got out the topographic map and looked at it and saw what the elevation was and decided, well, okay, what we do, we'll find out where they are. Then we'll make our approach in our particular azimuth down through the valley. And when we get to a certain altitude, if we don't see the ground, then we're going to pull up and go. So we went down through the clouds, and we're just kind of coming down through the clouds, and we didn't see the ground, so we pulled up and left. And in the meantime, we're on the gauges the whole time. So then we started heading back to the base and got up to about 2,000-3,000 feet, heading back out of the clouds there. And suddenly I see these little white things going by in the helicopter real fast, boom, boom, boom. I finally figured out they were canisters on a little parachute because they'd burned out where they lit flares. And they were canisters that had burned out, and they were all just flipping by the helicopter. I think we're going to dive because we're going to run over a helicopter. We missed them. So we went all the way back to the base and on instruments all the way down through there. And then I had a little non-directional beacon on the airfield that I figured out where we were and made an approach into there on IFR. That was a complete IFR all the way. And then it broke out about 200 feet above the deck, over the runway. That was pretty hairy. I can remember one time I went up, it was in the Central Highlands area, and I flew into this place at about 2 o'clock in the morning. And they had some, they said they had some rescue out there. So we went in to pick up the rescue people, and so we picked up took a couple of patients and took them out of there. And then we went back up there, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, now we landed the helicopter it was a Jeep that had been bombed out, and it had one headlight down, and so we landed in the light of that Jeep there, and all of a sudden I looked back, and about 37 different Vietnamese were on the helicopter. They were getting out of there. They said, "Oh, heck with us, we're leaving," because they were getting overrun, So I think I might have set some sort of record flying at a 205 with 37 people on it, getting out of there. It just staggered out. We had every bit of power we had to get out of there, but thank goodness it was 2 o'clock in the morning, cool. And night in the mountains is really kind of hairy. And we had to go in and pick up a patient, and there was a artillery type place sitting on top of a mountain, and there was a cloud cap over them, so I couldn't get down through the cloud cap to get to them. So crew chief came over that day. He said, "Well, we go down the valley, and then we can have them shine a light, and we can just silhouette the trees as we're going up the side of the mountain." And it worked out just fine. They put a searchlight up there, and we just hovered right on, and hovered up the top and landed in the cloud there and took off again. That's just one mission out of a many that we did. You make do at the time you're doing it. I even did a night hoist mission one time, where you have to bring the patient up because there's no place to land, so you just hover over the trees. So you got spotlight onto the trees, and you just sit there and you hover and keep your eyes on the tree. And they start bringing the people up on the hoist. Well, the hoist is a real problem too, because it puts the helicopter out of balance there, because when it starts coming up, so you have to be on the gear, on the controls all the time. And sometimes they would hang up in the trees, and then you get kind of a jolt. But pretty interesting work. A real challenge for helicopter pilots. I got in trouble with the one where I was trying to hoist the guys up out of the jungle there, and we got snagged, and the helicopter went into the trees because I had so much on load, on board. So, and we crashed, and hurt my hip and all kind of stuff. So, and I contracted the disease I've got right now, this Parkinson's, by Agent Orange. We landed a place, and all of the stuff blows, and the dust and everything, and there was Agent Orange in there. So I don't recall anything after that we crashed in. I don't recall anything. A day later, I finally woke up in the hospital. And I was sitting there in the hospital and recuperating and sitting out in the veranda and watching the offensive go on outside our boundaries there. I was watching the war, just sitting there at the hospital. I tried not to get real close to anybody. I was pretty much a lone wolf in the whole darn thing. I went out and did my job and came back and just kind of was a lone wolf guy. Wish I had known some more people, because I just was not willing to get close to anybody because I was afraid I'd lose them, I didn't get any reception at all. Nobody knew I was coming back, and my wife didn't get they had delayed my letter saying I was coming home, and she didn't even know I was coming home, and she had planned all this stuff, and I said, "Well, I'm here. Sorry." I didn't care one way or the other. But I thought it really interesting that when I went out to watch a little league football game, and I'm sitting there, and it struck me that how beautiful the weather was, and how I'm sitting here and it's all quiet, nobody's shooting at you, and it was all green, and all these guys are out there just playing football and having a good time. I thought that was really interesting, very peaceful, Well, it took a little bit of custom, but I'm pretty easygoing, so I just got a job over there flying helicopters for a guy locally, and we were hauling banners around the University of Michigan football stadium, and about flying a Bell 47. And then I got tired of doing that, so I decided to go fly real helicopters down in the Gulf Coast. And I went down to PHI, it's in the Gulf Coast, and got checked out there and got hired by them and started flying offshore. Well, I followed up my career in the Army for about 3 years there, and I went back to flying, as I said, offshore. And then I picked up on the hospital programs. And my civilian life, I spent putting together hospital programs, flying helicopters for patients, and finished my career at CalStar, which is California Air Rescue, and so we shock trauma air rescue. So I was director of flight operations there. We had about, I don't know, at the time, 8 helicopters, and we were stationed all over California, Northern California. Well, it was a tough experience, but it was worth it. I mean, I enjoyed the experience. I wouldn't want to do it again, but it was quite an experience for a guy that loves to fly, which I love to fly, because the challenges of flying a helicopter in and out of these tight areas and things was really interesting. It tested my skills pretty well.